park naturalist here. My name is Randall Blackwood, and I want to welcome you here inside of Cathedral Caverns. Now, the entrance shot that you saw just a few moments ago is done completely by Mother Nature. We did not mine it, did not dig it out or anything like that. That's the way Mother Nature made it. It's 126 feet across by 25 feet high. Now, and the other shots that you can see inside the room here also indicate that as the entrance, while it's huge, the rooms inside here are even bigger. I remember a time when I first started caving that if you mentioned the idea of a cave, people would give the idea that they were small holes in the ground, muddy, wet, and pretty miserable to go through. The fact is, my grandmother would even comment that caves were a gateway to hell, but nowadays we know a lot more than that the entrance to a cave is the entrance to another part of the world that carries just as much beauty underground as it does above ground. Now, to begin with, we want to talk a little bit about the geology of the caves. To begin with, the caves here are all formed in limestone rock. Limestone originates from the bottom of the ocean many millions of years ago. If you can imagine, this entire area was underneath the bottom of the ocean about 340 to 370 millions of years ago. And as plants, animals, things like that would die, that was in the ocean would die to the bottom, Mother Nature then would come in and add a little bit of soil, a little bit of heat, but a whole lot of pressure, and turn it into limestone rock. Now, things that fell into that mixture of mud and silt at the bottom of the ocean then would get compressed in and made a part of the rock, and those would eventually become fossils. So consequently, limestone is loaded with fossils from the bottom of the ocean. In this particular cave, we have shark's teeth throughout many parts and segments of the cave, but there's also things like Archimedes, colony coral, things like that we'll find, and we'll talk about those in a later video. Now, let's go back to that limestone rock. Now, with all this area covered in limestone, then there was a huge collision between the North American continent and the African continent. It was kind of like two freight trains going head to head. When that happened, that shot this area straight up. At the same time, all the other continents also came together during that same time frame and created what we call the supercontinent, Pangaea. Now, it's during that time, as Africa grinded up against the Pangaea, then that the mountains that are the Appalachians were actually the tallest in the world. In fact is, Birmingham is the base of the tallest mountain of all. The mountain that where Birmingham sits at was 35,000 feet tall. That's over a mile higher than the Mount Everest that we have today. So it would have been huge in this area. And then over time has eroded down to what we now call the Birmingham Basin. The thing is, as you drive through Birmingham, down the interstates, you'll see the rock changes as you go through it. And that's because of the different bases of that mountain that used to sit there. Now, let's bring us back here to the limestone rock. Now, when that collision happened, this area was shot up straight up above the ocean, and that was the beginning of the caves. See, as rainwater falls through the sky, it becomes a very, very weak acid called carbonic acid that dissolves limestone. So your raindrops get together and form rain puddles. Your rain puddles get together and form cracks. The cracks get together and form crevices. And before long, you have a big underground river that carved out this passage. Now, in the case of Cathedral Caverns, that river is still here and still runs the full length of the cave, and is actually running in a passage underneath our feet as we speak right now. But due time, eventually the floor will collapse into that, but that'll be another time we'll contend with. Now, with the limestone, now as we go through here, as we go through the cave, we'll talk about other things that we find inside of caves, beginning with the most important thing, formations. And we'll look at a variety of them that we have here inside the cave. second room of Cathedral Caverns. In here, there's a number of interesting features about this cave. First of all, the most obvious one that you may have noticed from the picture is Rock Canyon, Big Rock Canyon that, as you can see, makes up most of the room here, the beginning half of it. Now, Big Rock Canyon is surrounded on two sides of it by what we call breakdown. That's rocks that has fallen from the side or from the ceiling over time. As the cave got bigger and wider, parts of the roof would collapse from time and build up on the side. Now, the same action as far as the water dissolving the limestone is also affecting the rocks that break down. The river that's running through the cave runs through the middle of Big Rock Canyon and is dissolving it as well as dissolving the rocks on the side of the canyon and on the walls as well. Now, the second feature that you run into is what we call chert nodules. That was a line of rocks along the edge of the limestone. The Indians loved to come down here, and that's what they were looking for. They would break off the chert nodules and use it to make their arrowheads, spear points, and other tools with it. You may know it by a more common name. It's often referred to as flint. Now, chert nodules originate from the bottom of the ocean from sponges. So over time, sponges would die and then they'd covered with silt and dirt from the ocean and then would get compressed and turned into chert nodules. So now you know what SpongeBob would look like in another 1,000,000 years or so. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the formations that you run into in the cave. First ones we'll see here, this particular one is a stalactite. That is, it starts from the ceiling and it comes down. Now, you also have stalagmites that start from the bottom and come up. Now, if the two join each other, they become what we call a column. Then it has to contact both the roof and the floor. And in this cave, we have a huge variety of different kinds of stalagmites, stalactites, and even a few other varieties called draperies and other stuff that we'll talk about in a future video. But this is a lot to give you an idea of what you're about to see as we journey through this cave.